Okay, so today I'd like to have a look at the possible impact of the US-initiated trade war that seems to be about to kick off. And I'm using Perplexity with DeepSeek R1 selected. As you can see, you can change that on the drop down. I'm using DeepSeek, which I thought might be quite novel, Chinese-based AI system to analyze the impact of the trade war. Let's set it running and see what happens. It's 12:40 on my clock, so we'll see how long DeepSeek takes to reason this out. And it's researching the timeline of events and it's analysing the impacts. And you can see it's coming out with the reasons, checking the results, confirming the timeline, suggesting what the impact might have been. And there the sources are popping up on the screen, as you can see. And it's talking about the 2018 to 2020 US-China trade war. And it says each tariff announcement triggered immediate sell-offs. So that'll be interesting to see what the SP 500 does tomorrow. And talking about sector-specific damage on agriculture, technology, consumer goods, and macroeconomic impact, and obviously legacy and lessons. Globalized markets and tariffs acting as both a political weapon and a drag on economic growth. You could argue that's perhaps the last thing we need at the moment, with growth very much in the doldrums anyway. And obviously they're looking at how did the stock markets react immediately, main reasons, long-term economic impacts, and how did other countries respond. You've got to remember that the current tariffs being announced also affect Canada and Mexico, specifically looking at China here by the look of it, but it's of course does affect Canada. Already said that they'll react. It's asking what specific projects, but I want to see if DeepSeek can go back a bit further. What about wars prior to, let's just go back a bit further and see what DeepSeek has to say about that. And you can see it's looking for search results, and it goes back to 1930. That's interesting. So the search results are mainly focused on recent trade actions. So by asking it to go back because I think it's worth seeing what we could possibly learn from history. It comes back to 1930, and global retaliation, e.g. Canada and Europe, worsened the Depression. World trade fell by 66% between 29 and 34. And then in the 1960s, they're talking about chicken war. EEC imposed tariffs on the US poultry, impact 25% US tariff on light trucks. The chicken tax remains in place today. And then we've got the US-Japan auto trade tensions of the 1980s, banana wars of the 1990s, and economic lessons from the pre-trade wars, retaliation cycles, often spark prolonged disputes and sector shifts, and obviously the World Trade Organization's role post-1995, whereas the WTO mediated with disputes. Now, whether that will happen this time around, anybody's guess. It's very early stages yet, but I find this quite interesting, using AI to just go back and pull up some useful points from the past. I'm interested in the 1930 one, so let's see if it's got anything about that. I'm just going to ask it to elaborate on the 19 trade war and set it going, because that is perhaps quite appropriate, bearing in mind we seem to be on the brink of a potential world slowdown in terms of economic activity. So let's just go back and see what happened in the 1930s, obviously before my time, and you'd have to be fairly long in the tooth to remember the 1930s. And you can see it went through the reasoning again, and then it talking about this Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act marked one of the most consequential trade wars in US history, exacerbating the Great Depression and reshaping global economic policy. And it gives you there the protectionist sentiment. You can see that the lawmakers sought to shield US industries and farmers from foreign competition. Sound familiar? The act raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods, averaging a 59% tariff rate, Canada imposed tariffs on US exports. Europe raised tariffs and implemented trade quotas. Global trade volume collapsed 2/3 between 1929 and 1934. Let's hope we're not going down that route. And then economic impact on the US economy, global fallout, sector-specific damage, agriculture, manufacturing and consumer prices. So tariffs raise costs for everyday goods. That's not good. Falling economic activity and rising prices, where we don't want to be going there. And legacy and lessons. Perhaps we should learn from history here. And then modern parallels remains a cautionary tale. Recent debates over tariffs see Trump's 18 to 20 trade war from reference its risks. Interesting. I'll leave it there, but you can do this sort of research yourself. But I do find it worrying, the current situation we're in. And this is where AI can help us DIY investors just stop and take measure and bear in mind what lessons we might learn from history. If you follow so far, thank you for watching. And this is just another example of Perplexity using AI reasoning through DeepSeek and yielding some quite interesting results. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.